In this episode, we're introduced to a character called Gale the Snail.
Yes.
Swallow it or spit it out! No, don't!
Gale the Snail is very annoying.
Yes.
Who is the most annoying person you know?
Interesting. I've never had to salt anyone, but I did think I'm just like going through puns of like assault. Then I thought assault and battery, and that just reminded me of a fun anecdote of a very Philly thing where apparently one of the sports teams fans started bringing batteries to games and throwing them at the opponents.
It seems like a hockey thing.
Yeah, I don't think it was, but I mean, the hockey thing is notorious. The Broad Street Bullies is what they would call the Flyers back in the 70s or whatever, I think. There was a Russian team, like a Russian national team that came, they were doing like a world tour to promote Russia as awesome, like in the 80s, Cold War or whatever.
Yeah.
And they played like literally every team and they beat every team in the world. But they forfeited the game in Philadelphia. They quit because they were getting beat up.
USA.
Come on, do a beautiful show. It's gonna be awesome. And some other musical stuff.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of It's Always Stockholm in Los Angeles. My name is Nate Harold.
And I am very tired.
It's well known he's sleepy, cut him some slack. Today we are talking about Season 5, Episode 4 of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. The gang gives Frank an intervention. Written by Scott Marder and Rob Russell, directed by Fred Savage. Do you have any interest in summarizing this episode?
Sure do. Okay. In this episode, if you don't happen to remember everything, Frank tries to bang his sister-in-law after his brother-in-law passes away. He attempts to do this at the funeral. The gang is a bit shocked, and it seems like Frank's really hit a turning point, possibly for the worst. So they decide to hold an intervention, and they don't, I guess, seem to really know how that works. They do visit a specialist. They do not heed her advice, and they proceed to plan a violent and probably traumatizing intervention. While Frank tries to bang his sister-in-law, Mac swoops in, pushes Frank off onto his niece, who's Gale the Snail.
Not
Classic.
blood related.
Well, yes, of course, the sister-in-law on the in-law side. And Mac moves in because Aunt Donna reminds him of Barbara, who he also slept with. So this all culminates in the intervention, which Frank misinterprets as a roast, which is pretty awesome. And all ends well, and they celebrate with some canned wine.
Well, last week I said like that was one of the best opening scenes of the entire series, and this one is not that far behind it.
Yeah.
The gang in the Range Rover, dressed appropriately for a picnic, dressed inappropriately for a funeral.
Right.
We get the great like D saying his shirt is on inside out and covered in grease, and he says it's not grease, it's sap.
I got really wasted. I must have climbed a tree.
Dennis and Mac maybe encouraging him to jump off the cliff and see where he lands. Charlie being like the best friend, being like, hang on, guys, like you don't know how bad this is. Like,
Right.
This is getting scary. And of course, they're not going to a picnic. They're going to a funeral, his brother-in-law's funeral.
Which is kind of like a party in the park, if the park
Exactly.
were, graveyard.
The party is in the cemetery.
Who has a party in the cemetery?
Your Uncle Max. He just croaked. Flush that turd down the drain.
But I think my favorite visual from this opening scene is when everyone is outside of the car. You see Charlie with a soccer ball. Mac has on a great green visor and is holding a squirt gun and a frisbee.
In flip-flops.
In flip-flops. Yeah, there's just a really, just seeing them, like they look like little kids.
Right.
Like disappointed because they thought they were going to go have fun.
Yeah. It really
Or
seems like
something
they're
else.
going to the beach.
Right.
Very lighthearted vibe, not funeral vibes.
It's just funny to think of like the gang bringing a squirt gun to
Right.
anything that they do.
Yeah, that was definitely like prop department, summer barbecue.
Yeah.
Just grab one of everything.
This episode has 2 alliances, and they're pretty interesting. I think maybe this is the only episode with these alliances. It's Frank and Mac, who are also like competing, but
Yeah.
they are literally walking miles together on the same mission. So it's like, I would call that an alliance.
In terms of them being in the same scenes together, yes.
Exactly. I mean, that's how you define it, I think, in this show. And we also have Charlie, Dennis, and Dee as an alliance, as like the concerned friends of Frank.
Right.
I'll start by commending you guys for taking the initiative to help Frank.
We're caring people. That's our nature.
It's a pretty interesting one. I think Charlie, Dee, and Dennis are like oddly on the same page for most of the episode.
Yeah.
Within the gang, it's pretty conflict free. Or, I'm sorry, within that alliance, it is.
Yeah,
Specifically.
Even Mac and Frank, there's a weird lack of conflict, even though Mac is trying to manipulate Frank. It goes over well.
Yeah. When he's lit on their long walk out to the suburbs, Mac proposes the switcheroo, and Frank just goes with it.
What's more depraved than that, huh? Plus, you're not blood related, so it's not that weird.
That is a good idea. I like the way you're thinking.
Yeah.
Right, and then even after he finds out what the plan was, he doesn't seem upset. And then later on, he finds out for the first time that that Mac was banging Barbara, or banged Barbara. It seems like it's going to go somewhere, but then someone says it's an intervention, it's okay, and then it goes away, it's fine.
Well, she was alive at the time.
Great line.
Which is like a corny stand-up comedy joke. Yeah, wonderful. So, Will, in this episode, the gang gives Frank an intervention. Mm-hmm. What's a highlight for you?
Well, there are too many to name. Far too many to name. But I'm going to say that Frank's de-evolution, Frank jumping off the deep end or off the cliff, as they say, is one of my highlights. He is in rare form in this episode, and as we've discussed in many previous episodes, he brings out a lot of the Penguin in this one.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
There's some grunting and some noises.
Some regurgitation.
Yeah, he first brings it out when he's talking to Donna at the funeral, and he's talking about how he really thinks they should plow, and he says,
I mean, really.
He makes some weird sounds and grunts. It's very animalistic. It's great.
Yeah.
And then, as you referred to just a moment ago, the walk with Mac out to the burbs where Donna lives, he is in rare form. I think that is an all-time classic scene.
It's truly shocking.
Yeah. Actually, I think I can remember back to maybe the first time I saw it, and even in context of Always Sunny, which is kind of over the top, that one felt like he was pushing it. He really was pushing the boundaries.
Because I've watched that scene so many times. He swallows the beer and then it comes back up. He's not like...
I noticed that this morning. The same thing. I was like, how did he do it?
How?
Did he swallow some of it and keep a little bit?
He's essentially barfing, right?
I don't think he's barfing.
But I mean, like it's the same mechanics. He swallows it. And then
I think he must swallow half of it, or
You think he's gargling it?
Yes, I think he's taking. I have to think that he took like a gulp of some of it, but there was some left, and he just. Oof. I
had a pretty similar highlight to that, which is Frank's jumping off of the cliff, metaphorically. But specifically, there was one line that he says in the opening scene.
I don't know how many years on this earth I got left. I'm gonna get real weird with it. Meanwhile, block the wind. I'm gonna roast this bone.
Jesus Christ.
That line, or those lines, is one of my favorite parts of this episode. Because I feel like it's maybe like often quoted or like memed. And also the end of it when he asks someone to block the wind so he can roast the bone. The Charlie, Dennis, and Dee walk away, and Mac actually does block the wind.
Right, he steps in as a human shield for the wind.
Very funny, very funny.
Yeah, I often quoted by me. I often say that. Don't know how many years I got left. Gonna get real weird with it. That might have kicked off the YOLO whirlwind, sort of. Maybe he was the first one.
I think that the initial meeting with the interventionist is pretty great. They're doing like a bad job all the way around. The first thing they bring up is the fact that Frank wants to have sex with his sister-in-law, and not that he's drinking too much.
What's Frank struggling with the most right now?
Ooh, he is trying to bang our aunt.
That's the big one.
And then it's pulled back into, well, yeah, it's not maybe that he's drinking too much, it's that he's drinking without me. And it's a classic Always Sunny thing where it's just basically them talking to each other and like, oh yeah, there's another person in the room.
Right. Ignoring her advice.
She brings up the idea of like, coming from a warm and friendly, concerned love for Frank is the best way to approach the intervention. But Dennis thinks that like this is where like the violence starts, where he thinks that like
Too soft. I think we should come at him with an iron fist and crush him into submission.
And then, of course, the greatest part is, for me, is when Charlie suggests that she brings a net.
You know what?
could
If
put it
we
in her
maybe
pants.
ambush Frank with a net.
A net or a rope device, something.
Right.
Which, from watching Alone quite a bit, I would call it a snare.
Towards the end of the meeting with the interventionist, she's realizing how dysfunctional the group is, and she's like, actually, I do offer group therapy. And they start using the word intervention a lot.
But I do feel like she just tried to intervention on us. Did you intervene on us? Is that what that was?
And that's when they realize like they're probably better off without her, because she doesn't want to bring a gun, and she thinks they need group therapy.
Yeah, exactly. Which her delivery of that line is amazing.
It really is.
It's so calm and like peaceful, and like she's really good.
I do offer group therapy.
The interventionist is played by Susie Nakamura.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh, yeah.
she's one of those actors who you can tell like maybe has some improv experience. She was on like Curb, and I mean she's been in a zillion things.
Dead
but
to Me. She was the neighbor.
Dead to Me, Horrible Bosses 2.
Oh yeah.
So I just kind of get the vibe that she's from like the Second City UCB world.
Speaking of, do you know who else is in that world? Who specifically in the Second City world?
Is it Mary Ricecub?
No. Well, I can't say no definitively, but I can say that it's definitely Nora Dunn.
Oh yeah, Nora Dunn. I mean, I recognize her from SNL.
That's the crazy part. I started looking it up. I don't recognize her. And she was
Right.
on SNL when I was definitely watching it.
Right. Well, we'll talk about Mary Lynn Ricecub. I think I'm saying that right. In a little bit, but Mary was in a sketch comedy show that is one of my favorites of all time, Mr. Show.
Mr. Show. Yeah, I saw that.
And it's like I recognize her from Mr. Show, but it's one of those things where like I couldn't tell you specifically what skits I know her from. I know that she's just one of the several additional cast in that show.
Are you sure you don't recognize her from Dude, Where's My Car?
I'm pretty sure Mr. Show was maybe a little more on my radar around that time. Anyways, what I'm getting at is that I think maybe it's the same with Nora Dunn, where it's like she was on SNL, but maybe she was more like the straight guy, the straight character, not the Chris Farley or the
Right.
Adam Sandler, but more like, you need many different kinds of characters in these shows.
Didn't recognize her from that. But apparently she boycotted the Andrew Dice Clay episode,
I see.
which either coincided with her leaving the show or correlated.
Right.
Or rather, I guess those are the same. Correlation versus causation. I don't know which was which, but her, and Sinead O'Connor, I think, both boycotted the Andrew Dice Clay episode. Yeah, I guess since we briefly touched on it, Gail the Snail.
Yeah.
This is where
Big
we
highlight
are
for me, too.
introduced to wonderful, semi-reoccurring. I mean, she comes back, right? But
Yeah.
not often enough, I would say. Gail the Snail rules. She is their cousin, Aunt Donna's daughter. How do you describe Gail the Snail?
Garbage pail cousin.
Yeah, I guess that would be the best way of describing it. Which I don't think I understood until a recent rewatch. I don't think it like clicked because I always think Gail the Snail. I never think Garbage Pail Cousin.
No.
But then I realized like they did reference Garbage Pail Kids a few seasons ago.
It was a pivotal part of that episode.
Yeah,
of
Charlie's
Dennis running for office.
Charlie's future, and I forgot that because I was never really. I was around when they hit, but I was never really into them in a big way. But they always had that rhyme, right?
Right.
Yeah, so Gail the Snail would have been a garbage. Right. And it's funny, but it seems like they did kind of characterize or make her a caricature like they do. So
right.
she is actually like a human Garbage Pail Kid.
It's an amazing character. Everything she does is hilarious.
So she's often sucking her own spit back into her mouth, kind of making a weird noise.
Hey guys, you want to come to my car and take a puff? I got some medical marijuana.
It's unfortunate because she just wants to hang and be friends, but she's just very annoying.
Yeah, like when they're describing her to Charlie, he's like, "Oh, I mean, how bad could it be?"
No, he's like, "Oh man, that sounds kind of rough. Like throwing salt on a person."
Salt on a person,
and that's a great admission by Dennis and Dee.
Yeah, it's incredible.
When they're like, "Well,
she made us do those things, and quite frankly, I resent her for it. I mean, what kind of a person salts another human being?
Terrible.
There's no joy in salting someone. Everyone loses."
Yeah. So then Charlie spends 30 seconds with her, and he's like, "There's not enough salt in the world for someone like that."
Yeah, he's. It is funny. There are people like that where you really can't describe them, and then you meet them for 2 minutes, and you're like, "Oh yeah, I get it."
Gail the Snail, played by the aforementioned Mary Lynn Ricegub. She's also been in a zillion things. She's a stand-up.
Did you happen to watch any Weezer videos?
No.
Oh, well, have you ever seen the video for The Good Life?
I don't think so.
It's not a remarkable video, but it is fun because it's them in the studio and they have this like triple camera sort of effect where it's like a triptych, if you will, but
okay,
they're all like similar views. So if someone's walking from one side to the other, you'll see like two of them at one point and then they'll fade into
okay. Yeah. Right.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, I get it.
And yeah, it's just them in the studio, like kind of goofily playing the song, and it's cut between that and Mary Lynn delivering pizza.
Oh, yes. Now I know the video. Yep.
Yeah. So
of course I know that video. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very like she's just like going to LA apartments, and it's very like 90s low budget music video.
Right.
And it's, I don't know, it's kind of fun. It's fun in the sense of like it reminds you of when you had the budget to do that type of music video. Right. A different era completely. Yeah. And also because it's Gail the Snail.
And I suppose it should also be mentioned that, what was it, last season we met Agent Jack Bauer the cat. Mary Lynn was a pretty substantial character on 24.
Wow. Is that a good show? I've never seen it. Should I watch it?
I tried to watch season 1 and I did not like it. Yeah, I mean, because it came out like, right after 9/11 or maybe even during. Oh. So I could see it being like, he's a badass agent, CIA or whatever he is. And he's like, he's subverting terrorist plots and people love that kind of stuff.
Right. So you're saying it's basically like army propaganda.
Yeah, or like CIA propaganda. A highlight for me, this is more of like several things that happen in one scene. I love Breakfast at Donna's.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
There's so many amazing things about that. Mac failing on kicking open the door and instead breaking the window.
I think it's important to set up how he relayed that information when Donna asked, "Did you kick in my door?"
Kick yes, kick in no. That door is solid, which is the good news. The bad news is the window is not.
Don't worry, I'll fix that. You're always safe when you're with me.
It's kind of hard to tell. What is Mac making for breakfast? We know he's got eggs. He's got a lot of oranges.
Yeah, he made orange juice. There's a big pitcher that Gail drinks from.
Okay. Is it French toast?
No, there's pancakes for sure.
Pancakes. Okay.
You might not be able to notice because they are burned to the same color as the cast iron stove that they're sitting on.
Yeah, it's like black food.
Yeah, but yeah, they're definitely burned pancakes, which he does reference.
I made you breakfast. I hope you like it crispy because it is burned.
There's that. There's Frank and Gail the snail. Mac, like, did you bang her? And Frank has this amazing, like, retelling of the story where they just...
We did a bunch of those Monster energy drinks and drive them.
It was awful.
that whole bit is incredible. Or there's a great bit where Gail is like, she's definitely doing something to Frank underneath the table where no one can really see, and tells her mom that she's sexually active. And the line that Nora Dunn says,
33 years old, you're supposed to be sexually active. You're not supposed to be fondling your uncle under a table.
So good. She's giving him a handy.
Yeah, she's just mashing it though.
Yeah. Frank makes her stop because she's just mashing it. Amazing.
After this woman's daughter, his niece by law,
marriage,
I guess you would say, after she's giving him a hand job in front of her, Frank's like, I'll tell you what, how about this? I'll leave her alone if you and me get together. And then there's a great fight between Mac and Frank.
Frank, you can't do that. Donna's my girl.
I called her first at the funeral. Fair is fair.
And it culminates with, she kicks everyone out of the house. Gail leaves with Mac, but Frank comes back to grab some eggs real quick.
Right. Yeah.
Now, on the fandom wiki for It's Always Sunny, someone wrote that this is the first instance of Frank showing his obsession with eggs.
I was going to ask you specifically, I was going to say, is this like a precursor? Is this foreshadowing?
Well, I don't know if you remember the 2 episodes ago when the gang went on that road trip.
Oh,
I brought this up because Frank, when they have the biker in front of them going too slow, Frank suggests throwing an egg at him. And that's what I thought was the first instance of it.
Right. And it's unfortunate, and a lot of things kind of spiral out of control because of this, but they don't have eggs. And,
right.
That would have been a great idea.
Yeah. He just mentions it.
So maybe this is all tied together because maybe he realized he didn't have eggs, and maybe he saw that Mac throwing the beer bottle, the car getting fucked up, then they're having to use D card, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Maybe he realized at that moment how important it was to always keep eggs on hand.
I would love for that to be the case.
And this is the first time we see him proactively taking it into his own hands and grabbing some eggs.
Yeah.
Grabbing life by the eggs. I think it's worth discussing the canned wine. I forget what episode it was, but we did discuss the lips and teeth staining process.
That was the last episode. When they were at D&B's the second time, they had purple mouths. And I thought that was a great sort of subtle little joke.
Right. And, I think the waitress tries to offer them a bottle.
Why don't you leave the judgment in the kitchen?
Did I mention how the red lips and teeth to me are like a natural warning sign?
Yes, you had quite a lot to say about it.
Okay, good. I don't know if I related it to this, but I've recently been thinking about how in nature there are certain like colors and smells and things that indicate.
Sure.
Like, so I thought like, yeah, it's just like a warning to let you know that people might be belligerent and drunk. Mm-hmm. Because wine drunk is seemingly different than other drunks. Ooh.
Why don't you leave the judgment back there in the closet?
No. I will bring it out of the closet, out of the kitchen. Question for you. Back in your days of drinking alcohol, do you notice a difference between being drunk on wine versus beer versus alcohol?
Oh, yeah. A friend of mine had a great name for that. He called it banana brain.
Okay.
Please and I was explain. Like, after he said that, well, I was going to say, after he said that, I couldn't pinpoint specifically what resonated with me about that, but as soon as he said it, I was like, I know exactly what you mean. I can't put it into words. This is a experience type of situation where like you don't have that experience, so you can't relate, but you just have to trust me in saying banana brain is 100% accurate.
Well, okay, so does Banana Brain talk about the differences between the three, or does it explain one specifically?
Specifically related to drinking red wine.
Okay. So
spot on. It is
drinking
just
red
trust
wine
me, it is spot on. That
gives you
any
banana
listeners
brain.
listening, and any listeners who have experienced banana brain will know exactly what I'm talking about.
Is it because you become like a monkey?
No, it's not. It's not monkey related.
Are you sure?
But banana brain, I'm telling you, it's like slippery. It's mushy. Your brain turns into this like softer material. It's not quite its usual rigidity. That's the best I can do. I think maybe banana brain could also be, and again, when I say banana brain, I'm talking about red wine drunk out of a glass or a can. Doesn't matter. That the delivery method doesn't really make a difference.
Right.
Although it's easier to gesture wildly and stuff. Maybe there's, and this is all dependent on the individual. Like some people could maybe go the other way, say the opposite thing.
Yeah.
But maybe there's like a higher tendency because, again, you're not going to relate to this, but like maybe red wine tastes better than bottom shelf whiskey. So you drink a ton of it, and then that leads to a blackout, which is the ultimate banana brain.
I see.
Because it's too slippery, it's too mushy. It's getting all over the place. That's not a brain. That's a smushed up banana.
That's like some banana bread bananas.
Yeah, blackened bananas.
That's why they call it a blackout, because the banana has turned entirely black.
Holy shit, that's exactly right. Yeah, I mean that's kind of the best I can do. Like
Yeah.
wine comes in these bottles. That's like, if you're young and partying, you probably have your own bottle, and drinking that much of red wine will make anybody's brain banana.
Well, yes. Okay, so canned wine, great. I love the way in this episode it progresses from Frank being kind of off the deep end and
and they're kind of being judgmental and being
skeptical.
like, yeah, he's gone nuts. He's crazy. You might as well just jump off. And then
they're like, oh, well, he does have some good ideas. Dee is the first one to join the team at the intervention. She's got her canned wine, which the intervention therapist does note.
And you're drinking wine out of a soda can.
Yeah.
Oh, you put wine in the soda
You didn't
can?
know, did you?
That's good. You stole
Soda.
Frank's idea.
Yeah.
Well,
It
that's
actually
a
is a
good
pretty
idea.
good one.
I mean, the guy's got great ideas.
He's a
and now
smart man. That's not what we're here about.
after the intervention, it's just like, you're drinking wine out of a can.
Well, I think she does say that to Dennis, because Dennis
she
didn't
does.
know. But
She does, but it's still funny to like that being the selling point after it just got pointed out.
right, and then Dennis is the next to fall at the bar, and he loves it. It really does. I mean, the way they're describing it, it makes sense.
Can I just say, as a side note, I am loving this canned wine thing. I think it's brilliant.
Right?
I mean, I'm active. I'm gesturing with my hands.
I think in the year of our Lord 2021, I think that there are some wines that come in cans, like
Right.
rosé or something like that.
I have a
Maybe
friend,
not like red wine, but
I have a friend who's been trying to get me to invest in a canned alcohol thing, but it wasn't wine. It was a different type of. It was like a mixed type thing, but.
yeah. But you could see how that wouldn't be like super outlandish at this point.
Yeah, it doesn't seem as different.
Or like a white wine, maybe that makes more sense. Something sparkling, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, once the White Claw revolution came out,
Right.
all bets are off. I think everyone's looking for the next canned something. So,
Have we just stumbled upon a business idea?
well, I think we did, but we stumbled upon the idea from 2009, which would have been killer if we had jumped on it then and been like, hey,
I don't know.
They're onto something.
I don't know if the world was ready at that point. It was only for the the deviants. I'm going to get a little specific on this highlight. And it kind of ties back into something that you've already pointed out, the long walk, the Oregon Trail of this episode with Mac and Frank. I'm specifically talking about a line that Frank says, and I'm going to put it in here because I wrote this down as this might be the best delivery of any line on this episode. When Mac suggests to Frank that he go for Gail the Snail rather than Donna, and Frank says,
My niece? Yeah. Gail the Snail? Yeah, dude.
like, talk about your penguin
Yeah, he is in character.
attributes. Yeah, he's definitely in character.
What? How do you think he pulled that off? Do you think that was like a lot of direction from someone, or do you think this is just like him going for it?
Well, okay, my theory is that with the wine in a can and the purple lips and everyone being like pretty good at drunk acting, I think that all of these actors have done their fair share of drinking in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're pulling from that experience.
Right.
And I think Danny DeVito is just exceptionally talented as an actor and pulling from life experiences that he turned into this, like, Mac calls him an animal.
Right. Yeah, he's a penguin. Do you think there's any chance that he is drunk on this set in this scene?
I'd say it's highly unlikely.
Was that ever a thing that we knew or didn't know as far as them drinking on set?
Gonna lead into this because I was reading about the audio commentary for this episode on the DVD set is Danny DeVito and Drew Pinsky, Dr. Drew.
Oh, weird.
Because interventionist. No, it makes sense. It makes sense, I think. I mean, yes, it is weird. So in looking for that audio commentary, I ended up watching the audio commentary listening rather, the audio commentary from Charlie's Mom Has Cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Charlie Day and Glenn Howerton. And they're talking about the last scene when they're digging up Barbara in that episode. Glenn Howerton says that they were like 5 or 6 beers deep because that was the last scene they shot for season 8.
Oh,
so they were celebrating. So I think that, yeah, like in situations like that, maybe they do or did imbibe while on set, but I don't think like middle of the day.
Right.
Danny DeVito seems like he's a pro.
Yeah, he is an old school pro. I guess if he were doing that, it would have been 25 years ago or something, 30 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. I can't imagine how bad a hangover would be if you were in your 70s.
And 4 feet tall.
I can do another highlight that's just a line.
Sure.
When Frank is returned to Patty's and he's mistakenly under the impression that they're roasting him, which is also just a very funny concept.
Yeah, great.
And everyone is super drunk and has red lips and mouths. Dennis does like a bit where obviously they had used the show Intervention as a reference, because those always start with like, your addiction has affected me in the following ways.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah. Dennis's line is,
And your addiction has affected us in the following ways. You are annoying.
delivered in the most like annoying way possible.
And Frank loves it. He's so good. The interventionist starting the intervention properly and him saying, "What? Who is this broad? She's not funny."
Everyone's here today because they care about you and they want you to get well.
She ain't funny. Next.
So good. And then it breaks down and sort of into a chaotic, just a free for all of everyone saying intervention.
Right. I was trying to think of a word or a way to describe what they are doing, because it's like when you're in like maybe a group exercise and it's like the person holding the ball can talk.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the person saying intervention has the ball in this scenario.
Yeah, but it's similar to that, but in this way, it's like it's kind of like the word Smurf, where you can use it in any way you want, because they say intervention to mean that, when you need to intervene and stop someone from doing something, like when Mac comes in with Gail the Snail, and then they also try maybe to intervention her out of the bar.
Yes.
And then I think when Frank admits what Nightcrawlers is, Charlie says intervention as in
stop
intervention
talking.
Means, like you can't tell secrets, because that was a pact that they had. But then, what's the last intervention? There's
Frank says it when Mac mentions that he slept with Barbara.
I don't know if Frank says it, but I think someone else says it.
No, Frank says it.
Frank
says intervention.
Try and bang Donna because she reminds me so much of your mom. Which is like the best sex I ever had. And while
Intervention. Huh? You bang my dead wife?
He says it to like slow the conversation down so he can question him.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think someone solves that or smooths that over by saying intervention. I think Charlie Charlie says,
it's cool, man. It's cool. Intervention. Okay.
So you can interrupt someone. You can pause the action by saying intervention, but then you can be like, hey, this is a safe space. You can't get mad that he banged your dead wife because intervention. So they use it in like 9 different ways.
It's hard to describe the way that they're using it, but when you're watching the scene, it makes total sense.
Yeah. Because it literally means anything.
Oh, and then real quick, that early in that scene, again, they're like maybe not fully understanding what an intervention is because they suggest to the interventionist that she have an intervention with Charlie about his damn illiteracy.
Right.
Charlie's line is one of my favorites also.
Come on, they've been riding me all day. I can read it right. I just don't like to read it right.
And I guess like one more for me is more towards the beginning. The scene where Mac introduces himself to Donna.
Oh, yeah.
We sometimes mention how like maybe Rob McElhenney isn't like the best actor out of the group, but his work in this scene is incredible.
Hey, I'm Mac. Barbara's ex-lover. She may have mentioned. You were going to say something?
No.
I think that his lack of raw acting ability is kind of what makes this scene almost.
100% agree.
There's like a childlike awkwardness to it.
Yeah.
Then his body language as he turns, he walks away in his flip-flops, and then, the coy look back.
A very demure pose looking back to see if she's watching him walk away. And then he comforts an old man as the scene is ending, which was just a wonderful touch. Okay, Will, on a scale of A to F, what do you rate this episode?
I would rate it off the charts on an A+. Do you think it's weird that the system goes A to F?
Yeah, it's really weird.
Like,
where did that come from? Why can't you get it? Why can't you get an E?
F makes sense because it stands for fail, I assume.
Yeah.
Maybe there's like a pass-fail, and then somebody was using a number system, and they tried to combine them somehow. I don't know. Anyway, how about you? What do you think? What are we going to get this?
I think this is an A. This is a solid A for me.
Wow, that's like an A++ for a normal fan.
The introduction of Gail the Snail.
Oh, yeah.
Max B&E.
Yep.
Wine in a can. And the misuse of the word intervention.
Right.
Great. Well, join us here next week for the episode entitled The Waitress is Getting Married.
Is this the one when Charlie goes on a date?
Yeah.
So good. All right. Exciting.
Feel free to follow us on Instagram at always_Stockholm.
Or on Twitter at alwaysstockholm.
And with that, we're done. Goodbye, Will.
It's been real. Thanks so much. See you next time.
Brought to you by the Natty and New Network.